उंगली करो।
So, hello everyone. First of all, I would welcome everyone and also our Honorable Chief Director Dr. Amit Pandey sir and our Director sir Dr. Jairaj Pandya. Let me introduce our chief guest. He is a graduate from Nagpur University and done fellow program in IIM Ahmedabad. Today he will train us how to face an IT interview. So I would like to invite Dr. Amit Pandey sir to take the further session. Thank you so much, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Bhargavi. Okay, I believe the floor is open for me now. So first thing is, what I'm going to share today is some tips on how to give the interviews in the right way. This may or may not be the perfect way of giving interviews. There may be 15, 20 different other ways which are possible, right? So I'm presenting to you what I think is one of the best ways to go about it. Okay. Firstly, am I audible? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. I will. Okay. So let me just start the presentation. Okay. I'm putting it on. Okay. If you look at it, when I had a discussion with Jairaj sir, he wanted something where we can help students in terms of how should they actually face interviews, right? And this forms the basic premise. But if you look at it, I may not be the perfectly right person to do it. I have not faced technical interviews since my engineering days when I was interviewed by various software companies, but I strongly believe not much has changed. So I took inputs from a lot of our guys who are involved in software interviews, and I am presenting the data collected from all of them. Okay. Before we start, any questions that you may have? Okay, I assume there are no questions, so we can move ahead. I also have with me Preeti Chauhan, who's our Deputy General Manager HR, who takes care of a lot of these portfolios, and the entire recruitment team reports into her. So I'll also ask her to provide her insights as and when required. I'll go to the first slide now. So what are some of the objectives? If you look at the objectives, first is to understand the interviewing process. So what goes on in an interview, what kind of interviews are there, uh, how are technical and behavioral interviews different. So that's one. Second is how should you typically prepare for an interview. So what are some of the things that you need to keep in mind while preparing for an interview. Third is how should you behave during an interview, right? Now, that reminds me of a very famous research study done by Google. So, in about year till about year 2012, Google used to conduct almost 7 to 8 rounds of interviews for various roles, right? And for someone to be hired in Google, the mandatory condition was that all of them should agree on that particular candidature. Now, I went through this process once myself. I know how tedious and cumbersome it is. Then, somewhere around 2012-13, Google started looking back at the data. And Google realized that how much time does an interviewer take to form his or her opinion about the candidate, and the time was less than 30 seconds to 1 minute, right? So within first 1 minute of you going and meeting the interviewer, in his mind, he or she has already formed an opinion about the candidate, and then they spend rest of the interview in confirming that bias. So if they have liked you, they are likely to ask questions and steer you towards a positive end, and if they have disliked you, they are likely to push you towards a negative end, right? Now, on other side of the table, what I try to do is train my managers on how to remove these biases during interviews. So that is my focus area. But it is also important for you guys to understand that the judgment is made very quickly by the interviewer. So it's important that you put in best foot forward when you go and meet them. I'll go to the next slide. So before we start, first is just 2 3 slides about who we are as Amnex. So Amnex is an Ahmedabad headquartered IT firm. Uh, we are a future first solution enterprise. We do a lot of high impact work, and most of the work that we do finally enables the common man. Right now, this may include areas as wide as mobility in terms of transport solutions, or agriculture, where we are working with farmers across the domain. We work in smart wastage management solutions, smart parking, smart street lights. So we do a lot of work around IoT enabled, so any IoT enabled sensors, and we have a large software division which manages the entire interface. So we have multitude of solutions across different domains, and we are a hardware plus software company, and we are a typical IT firm in nature. You will find a lot of nimbleness and flexibility. It's a family kind of organization. We love humor in this place. We also have a never say die approach. We usually deliver very difficult projects at very stringent timelines. Being a small organization, when I say small, we still have about 550 employees, but being a small organization, we always have our doors open. And though work can be tough at times, I think we have a lot of fun at work. These are some of the, okay, so that was about Amnex. Now let's talk about the entire interviewing process, right? Now, what I'm going to present to you comes more from our experience of interacting with various IT firms, and this is not specific to Amnex, right? So, for me, I wanted to give you a view of what different IT companies do across India when they look at the interviewing process. This includes Amnex, but I'm also bringing in insights from TCS, Wipro, Infi, Google, and others, right? So I also had an opportunity in my days to interact with a lot of these companies, and we have strong networks in all of these places. So some of these insights will also come in from there. The first is, why do companies interview, and what is that both of them are getting, right? So from a candidate perspective, if you think when you're a candidate, you would be looking at various things, right? Sorry, I okay. So you would be looking at career opportunity. Right? So for a candidate who is just completing engineering or MCA or any of these courses, it's your first career opportunity. This is your first entry into the corporate world, right? So it starts your career. So that's what you're looking for. A learning opportunity. Now, when you're giving an interview, you also are looking for a place where you can learn a lot. So that's second. Third is compensation. Fourth is the entry into corporate world, which I discussed. And fifth is understanding the right role fitment, right? Now, there may be multiple organizations, let's say across Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and India. They may have similar roles, but finding the right organization which is aligned to your expectations, where culture is similar, where you can work, is the key. So this is what a candidate typically looks for in the interview. What do firms look for? So they look for hiring future employees who can create value for them. And in the way they look for usually high performers, people who are going to deliver goods to them. They look for long-term commitment. Right now, when people join organizations, they take usually 6 months to 1 year to start becoming completely functional, start adding values. If you join an organization, don't imagine yourself adding value before that. It takes that much time. So they are going to put in a lot of time, resources, efforts on you, and that's why they also look for long-term commitment. Employability. So they look for, when I hire this person, is he or she employable? Finally, they look for learning agility. Now, IT as a domain is evolving at a very fast pace, which means every few months we have new technology, new platforms, there are new domain areas. Right? So, all IT firms look for people who have learning agility, who are keen to learn new things, who are able to learn new things at a faster pace, and that is why learning agility becomes a key. So this is what both the sides are looking for when they walk into an interview room. So what is being measured? So when we talk about an interview, what is being measured? First is experience and skills. So in your case, it is largely the skills. Experience you'll have after a couple of years. But can you really do the job? The question is in the interviewer's mind. Do you have the requisite skills, behavioral and technical, to perform the job? Second. Then second is, are you motivated enough to perform the job well, right? Now, different IT and software companies will have different kind of cultures. Some may be aligned to European and US clients, some may be aligned to Indian clients. So each of them will demand something different from you. So are you motivated enough to perform well? That's second thing. Third is culture fit. Now, what kind of a person are you? Are you going to fit into a culture which is high stress, high pressure, or you are likely to thrive in a culture which is low pressure, provides a lot of flexibility, creativity? So both will have its own pros and cons. So culture fit is what something companies look for very clearly during the interview process. Now, as head of HR, I think I have interviewed various people who may be really, really sharp, maybe really intelligent. We may not have hired them because they wouldn't have been successful in our culture. At the same time, I may have hired people who may not be so intelligent and sharp, but whom we know would have succeeded in our culture, right? That doesn't mean that we don't have bright people in our culture or our company. It's just that we sometimes we take those calls, right? You don't want to have people who are really bright, but then they don't align to your culture and they don't become successful. So each company has this culture, and they will always look at having the right culture fit when they are hiring. Okay. Now, when you look at interviews, what kind of interviews can you expect? So during COVID, a lot of you may have finally video interviews or telephonic interviews to start with, but these are largely technical interviews. So you have in technical interviews, you may have panel interviews. In panel, instead of facing one person, you may be facing a panel of 2 to 3 to 5 people as well in your interviews. Second is regular face-to-face interviews where you get to sit across a table with the other person and have the interview. Third is video interviews. Fourth is telephonic interviews, which are very similar to face-to-face interview, just that it's on a different platform. Second is behavioral interviews, right? So in the behavioral interviews, the candidates are grilled on their behaviors, attitude, how do they approach different situations, difficulties, what are their own strengths and weaknesses. These are really done to see if you will make a good culture fit for the organization. So the first technical interviews is usually done to see do you have the experience and skill. Behavioral is usually done to see if you have motivation to perform and if you have the right set of attitude to perform. Right? A third variety of interview is also called case-based interviews or puzzles. Large consulting firms as well as some of the high another version or variant of this is puzzles. So if you look at Infi, they used to ask a lot of puzzles long back. I think Microsoft, Google still does it. So puzzles. So when you ask puzzle to a person, idea is not to see if you know the answer or not. Idea is to see what is the step-by-step process that you follow to solve the puzzle. That tells a lot about you to the interviewer. Fourth trick is what we call stress interviews. Now, stress interviews are used in rare circumstances, mostly in mid to senior level roles. In stress interviews, you grill the person a lot to see how do they typically behave in a difficult situation. Okay. Before I move ahead, I want to check if there are any questions.
Sir, once you are done with your PPT, then last is our QA session.
No worries. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, what would a typical detailed hiring process would look like? First is you are likely to face an aptitude test. Now, aptitude test will be typically an MCQ, which will have multiple choice questions. This will have both a technical MCQ as well as your aptitude, general aptitude test. Now, from my own experience, when I was in my fourth year, I realized that all the guys and girls who were actually preparing for CAT or GMAT did really well in the interviews because they had performed really well on general aptitude questions, right? So it makes sense to brush up those skills as well. A lot of companies have started including general aptitude questions as well along with the technical aptitude test. Second round would be typically an technical interview round where one of the senior people from the organization would grill you on your technical aptitude. They would ask you various questions around your concepts, knowledge of basic things. Okay, I'll talk more about it later. And third is behavioral interview. The interviewer understands attitude and culture fitment of the candidate. This is typically done by the HR team of any of the organizations. So, if you look at the technical interviews, one thing that you need to keep in mind is organizations do not hire software engineers; they make them. Right. So, as a fresher, I don't think any of these organizations expect you to write path-breaking codes or do miracles. What instead they expect you to have is clarity of concepts. That's one. Uh, Programming logic. That's two. Uh, Learning skills, which means ability to learn across domains, is three. And fourth is commitment. What is your commitment towards this learning? This is what, when a technical interview happens, people look at. So, what is more important is, uh, do you understand your own basic subjects well? It's first. Then, what is your exposure to programming logic? Things like object oriented programming or software lifecycle development concepts. How well do you know this? Right? They may give you a situation which will be a short one because they want to understand how do you reach the final solution. So, what are the steps that you use to reach the final solution? This helps them to understand, can you actually apply logic while programming? Right? And then learning skills and commitment is something that they will get to know by seeing what is the depth of your knowledge in your own chosen areas. Now, if I talk about concepts, some of the things that when I spoke to a lot of different people across our software team, as well as some of my friends across organizations, some of the key concepts that they expect people to know is first is object oriented programming system, which includes concepts like abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, then entire software development lifecycle, which includes gathering requirements, analysis, planning, development, testing, implementation, maintenance, and documentation. So the key models of SDLC, which includes agile, waterfall, spiral, iterative, V model. Now remember this, people don't expect you to know each and everything. For example, uh, working in an agile and waterfall is are two very different things, right? But you should know what is the basic difference between these approaches. You should understand how agile works, how waterfall works. This is going to help you more during the interview, right? So they don't expect an expertise level from you, but they do expect that you know some of these basic concepts really well. Then third is database management. What is normalization of database? What are advantages of different kind of RDBMS methodologies? Then software configuration management, software analysis and development tools, other concepts such as arrays, loops, joins, views, triggers, modularization, functional and non-functional requirements. This is just a snapshot of basic concepts. Now, uh, for example, when an interviewer goes into a room and he meets a chemical engineer who wants to become a software developer, it is highly unlikely that the interviewer is going to ask them questions about uh, software programming. They are more likely to ask them what are your favorite subjects and then to get into depth of those. Now, if you're a person who knows his or her subjects really, really well, if your concepts are well prepared, they are clear in your mind, I think that will make your interviews really, really easy. I'll again repeat, companies are not looking for expert software developers. Companies are looking for people whose concepts are clear, who know their basic work really well. They don't expect you to know programming. Programming will be taught to you by them. That should not be a worry. But you need to have clarity in your basic concepts. That's the key. Okay, now what are the different type of questions that you see during the interviews? First is verification questions. These questions are used to verify credentials and experience of the candidate. So if you go and say that you have done an internship and you have designed or developed one program for somebody, they are going to verify that claim, ask you detailed questions about it. They may ask you questions about your opinions. For example, between agile and waterfall, which one do you think is better? Right? What are they trying to do? So they are trying to dive deeper into your thought process and see how you respond to it. Third is behavioral questions. Now, behavioral questions are are asked to understand behaviors and attitudes or motivations of people. Now, in this, what is typically done is they give you a situation and they want to explain how did you go about it. Now, even during internships or when you do some work, they may ask you that question. A very good model here is called STAR model, which is situation, task, action, and result. Which means if you are given a situation, first what was the situation, then what was the task assigned to you, third was third is action. So if this was the situation and task, what action did you take? And finally, what was the result or outcome? So this clearly defines how did you go about the entire situation, helps you put your thoughts very clearly, and on basis of this, you can actually provide a lot of clarity to the interviewer who can understand how you work in a particular situation in a much better way. Fourth are brain teasers. Now, brain teasers can include puzzles or brain teasers. They are used to see if you can handle pressure or handle out of box situations. Okay. They're also used to measure creativity or ability to innovate. Fifth is case questions. So in these, the interviewer may actually give you a small case to see how would you go about it. Idea is to understand how do you respond in a given situation. Do you use logic? What kind of logic do you use? Right? And remember, in some of these, there are no right and wrong answers. In case questions, as well as in brain teasers or puzzles, the interviewer wants to understand how do you go about this situation, what are the different steps that you take. Okay. And then six kind of questions are nonsense questions. Sometimes they are asked to unsettle people, put pressure, stress. You should usually interviews should avoid these. But in case you get a question which you think doesn't make very sense, you can politely and honestly answer it. That should not be a challenge, right? Okay, now coming from technical to behavioral side of questions, some of the questions that you can expect during an interview is what are you good at? What things give you energy? What comes easily to you? What do you learn quickly? What did you find easiest to learn in your last job at university? For example, in your college, what was the easiest thing for you to learn, right? When did you achieve something you were proud of? What was your biggest failure? What did you learn from it? Why should we hire you? Why are you interested, let's say, in working in Amnex or in Google or any of these companies? What interests you about this company? Where do you want to be 5 years down the line? What interests you about this career in software development? Then you can ask questions like, describe the worst project that you have worked on. So in your 6 years of bachelor's and master's degree, what were some of the worst projects that you have worked on or best projects you have worked on? You can explain that. Provide a situation where you have thought of a very innovative solution, and what happened last time when you were late with a project, right? So these are some of the questions that may ask. Now there is no dearth of questions that can be asked. I can tell you some more questions. For example, what are your strengths and weaknesses? That's another question that usually pops up very commonly in the interviews. Now, when these questions are asked, the interviewer is looking at multiple things. He's looking at how honest are you with your answers. Second, how well do you know yourself? Okay, then how do you respond to various situations? So he's trying to understand, he or she is trying to understand uh, how agile are you, how flexible are you open to new learning, how do you handle failures? So these are attitude and motivation related questions that help them understand you during an interview. Now, um, what should you do before an interview? Right. First thing first is you should do your homework really well. Right. So have you prepared your basic concepts? Now, some of the technical concepts we discussed. Now, you need to prepare, brush up your concepts. My tip will be write down a basic note on all of these basic concepts in your own language that you remember, right? Do not try to mug up or remember them word by word. You will never. You should be able to explain these concepts to a layman in a layman language, right? So you need to write down all these basic concepts, have a clear cut understanding of these. Now, second thing is you need to be very sure about which is your favorite subject, right? And in a lot of interviews, I have seen people talking about some random subject as their favorite subject because they want to impress the interviewer. And after two questions, they find it that it is not their favorite subject anymore. For example, if physics is your favorite subject, you should remember that gravitational force will be 9.8 meter per second, right? If you have a favorite subject, be well prepared about it. There will be questions that can unsettle you, so you should remember that. My tip to you would be identify a subject which is your strong area and not just your favorite in your mind. Select a subject where you're very confident, you know most of the stuff. That will be key. Third is before you go for an interview, read about the company. What do you know about the company? Have you seen their website? Have you read about the company? See, today there is Google. In my days, there was no Google. There was no access to information. Today there is so much access to information. You can find out about a company from its Glassdoor reviews. You can find out about a company, about the news articles being published about it. You can go to their website, navigate through it, understand their products, services, different things that they do, what are the perks or benefits given to their employees. Then try and understand what are the domains and industry segments that they cater to. That will tell you a lot about that organization. The next is what do you know about the role, right? So is it a back end role or is it a front end role? Will it require you to travel? Will it require you to go on site? Get that clarity as well. Right? Speak to your friends or seniors who might be working in these companies. Understand what skills and qualities do these companies look for. Now, if I look at it, you will have your seniors working across various companies in Ahmedabad. You can get first-hand important information before the interview. Right? So that should help you. Then prepare yourself with interview-related information. Think about answers of basic questions. Now, one question where I've seen a lot of people stumble, situation where I've seen a lot of people stumble is when you ask them, tell me something about yourself. Now, in these scenarios, it is I've seen a lot of people talk about stuff which is irrelevant. What you need to remember is you should not speak more than 4 to 5 lines. Talk about your education, your strengths, uh, key focus areas, what all projects you have done, maybe a bit about your family background if there's something interesting. What you want to do is to generate some interest over there. Then second question where I've seen a lot of people stumbling are around strengths and weaknesses, right? Now, if I ask you that question, tell me your 3 strengths and weaknesses, you will be able to tell your 3 strengths very clearly. When it comes to weaknesses, a lot of people stumble, or a lot of people try to show their strength as a weakness. One example is I am workaholic, and that's my weakness. I like to work 15 hours a day, and that's why it's a weakness for me. It doesn't work actually. So you need to be honest when asked about your strengths and weaknesses. Then, what are your areas of interest? And similarly, what are your hobbies, right? Now, the interviewer, you're actually giving the interviewer an opportunity to explore you further. Your answers must be interesting, must be honest, right? You want to continue the communication. You want to create interest in that person that they should look at you, understand your profile, and maybe hire you, right? So think about answers for all these questions. The next stage is prepare yourself to feel stress free. Now, I've seen a lot of people becoming nervous before the interviews. That I think there are multiple ways of handling it. You can meditate, you can watch a movie, you can listen to music. Think about instances where you have done really, really well, right? Now, all of us have high points and low points in our life. Think about situations when you have done really, really well. That should give you confidence. And don't think about it too much. No interview is your last interview. In your life, you will get multiple opportunities from different companies. So no interview is end of the world. So de-stress yourself. If you are nervous during the interview, you are much less likely. Now, there are multiple research studies across the world that show that under pressure, a person is likely to perform at 50 to 60% of their capability instead of 100%. Right? So why take that chance? De-stress yourself before you go to the interview. Don't be nervous. The person who's sitting in the interview is also human. Then organize yourself well before the interviews. Keep your certificates, your interview notes. Always have a pen and some blank sheets with you. You may need them in an interview. Right? One thing that I've not mentioned in this slides is dressing up for the interview. Right? So when you are going for an interview, wear clothes that are comfortable, that are formal. Your shoes are polished. Your belt is firm and fit. Your clothes are ironed, right? Don't try out new clothes for an interview. You don't know how they will look on you. Wear clothes that are formal, ironed, cotton, comfortable. Okay. Uh, these are for men and women both, right? Your shoe should always be polished. Your socks should be of similar color as your trousers. Don't stand out in an interview. Wear normal clothes, right? Okay. Uh, See, so some of you would now end up giving interviews which will be either telephonic or on videos, right? For this to happen, please find a peaceful setting where you can have 45 minutes to 1 hour without disturbance. Also, make sure, test it out that you have Wi-Fi connection or internet connectivity during that time, right? Last thing you want is not being able to connect during an interview. Second is be present mentally and physically during the interview. If you're slightly late, offer an apology. Right? During the interview, do not check your phones, messages, WhatsApp, emails. Put your phone on silent before the interview. Turn it down. Don't look at it during the interview. That's very important. What happens is you may have put your phone on silent, it would still be on vibrant mode, and it will be ringing in your pocket. You will be thinking about who's calling me right now, and then you will get distracted during the interview. That shouldn't happen. So you should be able to focus on an interview. Fourth is be open, display openness and confidence to the interviewer. Right? He's looking to hire somebody who's gonna work with him for next couple of years. They will want to hire somebody who's confident, who's open, and who's strong. Okay. Now, how do you behave in an interview, right? So when you walk into that room, wait for the other person. When they ask you to sit down. Offer a strong handshake, but wait for them to extend their hand. Right? Do not play with your mobile phone, pen, pencil, rubber, hairband, any of the accessories, other gadgets during the interview. Your focus should be on the other person while you're talking to them. Be concise in what you say, right? So they don't expect you to roam around the world when asked for a simple answer. Be very clear and give an honest answer. If you're not sure about the question, ask again, right? So it's better to ask them about the question again instead of giving them a wrong answer. Now, active listening is very critical in all the interviews, right? Now, what happens is a lot of times when people are asking us questions, we are thinking about five parallel things in our mind, right? You need to avoid that situation. So listen carefully, keep your mind focused on what the interviewer is saying. What happens is when the question is being asked to us, we have already started formulating the response in our mind. That shouldn't happen. Wait for the interviewer to complete his or her sentence, don't interrupt them, then come to the solution. There are times when you may have a different point of view as compared to interviewer. Do not argue beyond a point, doesn't help. Be more patient. Be honest during the interview. If you will actually cook up a story, sooner or later they're going to find it out. Makes no sense there. Manage your voice in terms of words and tone. So language is critical during the interview. Now I don't expect anyone to speak Queen's English, but basic uh, English with right grammar words is important. Secondly, during the interview, always maintain the eye contact with the interviewer. If there are two to three interviewers sitting in the room, look at each one of them from time to time. If you don't look into their eyes, you are looking at their shoes, chair, table, anything else. It shows lack of confidence in you. So that shouldn't happen. Then, when you tell them something, be prepared with examples to back up what you say. Now, if you have spoken about a strength or a hobby, let's say your hobby is cricket, right? You need to have some examples from cricket that are noteworthy, that tells them that this is happening in reality. For example, if you say you have led college fest this time, they will want to know what exactly did you do, right? Which should show your leadership capability. So in that case, you need to have very clear examples, supporting facts of what you say. Then keep your guard up. Okay, be honest and wise, but don't be too naive in the interview. Is what I'll say. Now, if you look at this picture, look at these five different people. Do you see any of them getting hired in an interview? I doubt. If you look at the first woman on the left hand side, looks disinterested. Second one is all has already dozed off. The third person doesn't seem interested either. The fourth one looks aggressive, and the fifth one is lost in mobile. Right. So our body language plays a very critical role in creating a liking or disliking in mind of the interviewer. Now, what part of body language is important, right? So your body position, the location of your arms, legs, and hands, as well as manner of sitting and standing can tell you a lot. Eye contact. So eyes do reveal moods and feelings as well intentions and interests, and that's important. Facial expressions. So have a smile on your face, don't frown, don't look scared during the interview. Another tip is when you are sitting in a face to face interview, always keep your palms on the table and in an open position. That helps to create a lot of trust with the interviewer. Some more things about the body language. When you walk in for an interview, have a firm handshake with the interviewer when offered to. And these are some of the positive signals that you can do. So, when sitting in a conversation, always lean forward towards the interviewer. That shows interest, and then you are intent to listen to them. Be always smiling, that tells them that it is friendly. Then nod when asked about something, either yes or no, which tells them that you are listening, you are alert. Then eye contact. Be make Please make sure that you have eye contact with all the interviewers. So the negative signals can be crossed arms, which typically means defensive body language, fidgeting hands or tapping feet shows nervousness. Lack of eye contact shows that you cannot be trusted. Now, there may be 500 different reasons why you're not having eye contact, but that's the expression it creates. Okay, leaning back, for example, just like leaning ahead or forward shows interest, leaning back displays discomfort. Right? So these are some of the behaviors that you can use or avoid during the interview. Now, sorry, I can see there is one spelling error there. First is closing statement. Okay, so you need to courteously thank the interviewer for the opportunity to interview with the company. That's first point. Second is a nice handshake and expressing enthusiasm about the role. But remember, let COVID go away only after that offer you a handshake. Otherwise, they will end up sanitizing it a couple of times. Third is don't stalk them. I have seen a lot of people who become really enthusiastic. They want to know the interviewers more. You can see their FB requests, Instagram requests, or LinkedIn requests. If you want to send somebody a LinkedIn request, please ask them in advance that, sir or ma'am, will it be okay if I send you a LinkedIn request? If they say yes, you then send it to them, because they would be getting multiple requests over a period of time, since they will be interviewing a lot of people. Okay. So these were some of my thoughts. I am open to take questions if there are any.
Yes, sir, sure.
Sir, there is one question from students. Which kind of scenario-based question is asked in interview?
Okay, see, there can be multiple kind of scenarios. So don't think too much about which scenario and you need to prepare for it. What you need to have over there is presence of your mind, right? So you may be asked about any kind of scenario. Even I can't predict which scenario will be asked, but what is important is think through it, prepare logical steps in your mind, and then talk about it.
Okay, sir. Then next question is how to crack any technical interview.
Okay, the best way to crack a technical interview is remember all your core concepts well. You should know all your core concepts really well. They don't expect you to be an expert level programmer when they're interviewing you, but they do expect you to know all your core concepts really well. That's all you need to focus on.
Next question is give some tips about Skype interview.
See, in Skype interview, what happens is, so when you do a face-to-face interview, when a person walks into your room, there is a lot of aura, and you can see their body language, uh, and you can observe them very closely, right? In Skype interview, there is always a lag. So what is important is find a nice table and chair, just like you will have in a face-to-face interview. Sit there, keep laptop at some distance, have your hands on the table, be properly dressed, make sure you have a very good Wi-Fi because Skype will take a lot of bandwidth. And when you are interviewing, always take a pause because due to the lag, sometimes by the time you have finished speaking, the other person would have already started talking, right? To avoid those circumstances, take a pause and wait for 10 seconds before you start answering. Okay? Think through it well. And the biggest challenge in video interviews that I see is lack of actually connect. So what happens a lot of times is the interviewer is talking about something, you are talking about something, there is disturbance, the connect between two people goes for a toss, right? So you need to give it that time, that much patience when it comes to Skype interviews. Finally, during Skype interviews, please switch off your mobile and keep all kind of distractors away from you. See, when you go for a face-to-face interview, you know nobody else is going to walk in. But if you're giving a Skype interview, make sure you have locked the door because if somebody walks in during the interview, you will be completely distracted for a couple of seconds. Shouldn't happen. Sure.
Yes. Okay, sir. Then next question from students and how to write bio means how to perfect elaborate our specialities like in LinkedIn profile. Some of his software developers. So what things should they can write in?
Okay, now if you think about it, each one of you is actually selling a brand, right? Each one of you is a brand. Think of yourself as a product. Now, the way you go and buy a toothpaste, be it Pepsodent or Colgate or anyone else, Sensodyne, each one of has different features. So think about which words are going to tell the right thing about you. Don't write beyond a couple of lines, not more than 3 to 4 lines. Focus very clearly on what you want to say because nobody has that much patience that they're going to read 10, 15 lines about you. Should not be more than 3 to 4 lines. Focus on keywords instead of writing a story about yourself. Don't be pompous. Don't try to showcase much more than what you are.
Yes, sir. And last question is when someone asks any company why we are hire you. So what answer we would tell them?
Okay, if I was in your place, I would actually focus on my strengths. For example, like I said, I'm a hardworking person. I'm a quick learner. I understand your culture really well. You appreciate people who work hard, who display patience, who are willing to learn. I think I bring all of those capabilities to the table. And if given an opportunity, I think I would want to work long term in your firm. Right, so you need to sell your long-term commitment to them for them to buy it.
Yes, sir.
What else?
Yes, sir. Now our side is complete. Like all the questions answer are completed.
Sure. Anything else from my side, I'm more than happy to respond to it. My email ID is here. You can reach out to me on email and I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, sir.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
sir.
much, sir, for giving your valuable time. We are really glad to have you.
Sure, thank you. Pleasure was all. Thank you. I'm going to disconnect now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.